We can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. We can climb out of hell.
This is your dream. Your brain stores all its visual, tangible, and intangible memories in thousands of neurons in all parts of its matter. When you sleep, everything you experienced that day and mildly before is deciphered and categorized by your brain by importance and also by the strength of the experience. This is known as REM, sleep. Its function is so that you learn and remember from your experiences. If you did not sleep, your chances of remembering significantly drop. The brain does this as part of its survival mechanisms. As humans, our progressive DNA programs us to strive towards surviving and ultimately the desire to live forever. Therefore, a majority of your experiences that strengthen the likelihood of your survival within your position in life are remembered significantly when dreaming. This can be anything from learning to ride a bike, learning languages, remembering the back roads of New York City streets, the perfect pickup lines, and the complex choreography for the big show. We are more likely to remember something when it is repeated, and dreaming acts as part of this process of the inner memory. Therefore, in this context, we can say that these experiences fill up our dreams and are stored in the memory to relate to the individual. These stored experiences then shape your interaction with the world and how you understand to experience it. It is therefore crucial to understand which of your experiences are influencing your dreams. We can look at many types of experiences, but to better understand, we shall look at the source of where the experiences have come from, known as the influencer. Such influencers include people's opinions, family, friends, leaders, the media, news, art, lifestyles, literature, books, and experience. History, your gut feeling, also known as intuition, belief in a higher power, religions, and the esoteric. These influences that cause experiences enter our lives through dreams, and when repeated, store in our long-term memory. What would happen if you put a person from birth in complete isolation, far away from any influences? What would they dream about? To answer that, let's start with the blind. A person that cannot see still has the power of imagination, and through the remaining senses at their will, the blind create their perception of the world. A German study of dreams found in their studies of blind and non-blind people's dreams that subjects blind from birth dream just as non-blind subjects, with only two minor anomalies. The first is that a majority of younger blind subjects dreamt in black and white. However, older blind subjects describe their dreams rich in color and with imaginative visuals. The second is that the blind subjects had a higher nightmare rate of over 40% than compared to non-blind. The nightmares included death scenarios due to blindness and frequent bizarreness. What I would like to point out to the viewer is that this study correlates with the brain's function to her survival behavioral change into the person's current position in life through dreams. Most subjects describe their nightmares consisted of falling into holes, getting run over, and etc. Here we see the brain is learning the threats to survival and adjusts in the waking life towards surviving. What is interesting is that the subjects describe their dreams as bizarre. In many blind patients' dreams, reports describe nightmares consistently consisted of transportation. This was either by flying or falling, loud, unexplainable sounds, physical visions, and unrecognizable shadows. The phenomena of bizarre shadows, extraterrestrials, fantasy creatures, and angelic demonic-like beings continues to be a universal theme in dreams, even to the blind with more intensity. Would it be then safe to say that a person in complete isolation is still capable of dreaming, would dream about nightmares in complete absolute, with those dreams consist of the same phenomena of people who live in a civilization? If the creature phenomenon has a universal truth, it would induce that the process of dreams is a channel to a metaphysical state into a universal realm. A study of REM sleep highlights that at the highest point of the dream state, which is at the 6-hour mark, our brain falls into a deep trance. The brainwave frequencies of this trance is known as the Theta frequency range, a range that cannot be accessed consciously. The universal realm closeness in the human dictionary has the same likeliness as what we call the esoteric or spirituality, and for this context we understand it as the spiritual world.
Theta gamma sync is basically a brainwave state. So you've got basic alpha and beta wavelengths that your brain normally operates on. And those are basically, if you're just sitting there reading a book or watching TV, or if you're in intense study, you're going to be in alpha or beta brainwave states. You also have delta, which is sleep. Now, right before you hit delta, you've got what's called the theta brainwave state. And most people don't really stay in theta very long. They pass through it as they fall asleep. This is where you have hypnagogic hallucinations, where you'll be asleep before your body actually goes into paralysis, and you'll be like ice skating and you'll fall and jerk yourself back awake. That's the theta gamma, or that's the theta state. What they started noticing, if people hold this consciously, that something interesting starts happening. They'll be in this theta state, and all of a sudden they'll trigger a massive peak in their brainwave activity. Now, normally, at the highest states of conscious alertness, you're running at about 70 hertz. So they've actually measured that, 70 hertz. So then they started getting people into these brainwave states, into the theta, having hold that through, normally through meditation. They've also used different psychotropics and such to get people there. That they'll hold it just for a few minutes, and they start triggering this massive, massive flux. And this has gone up as high as 200 hertz. So they didn't think that was even possible. They thought 70 was the peak of what our brain is even capable of. But then they get people into these same states of ritual, meditation, prayer, anything that really taps into that spiritual state. And all of those are requiring that you drop yourself into the theta state. And the theta is optimally 4.5 hertz. So if you're able to hold that, you start triggering these. Now, what's interesting is that these two states of the gamma, they started referring to that as gamma, and the theta are linked, kind of like a kite string. As soon as people will get excited about it and go, oh, check it out, I'm seeing things, and I have this extrasensory perception, whatever. As soon as they emotionally get excited about it and pull themselves out of that deep, mellow state, boom, these go back down to alpha and beta. So the only way to be able to trigger these really, really high frequencies of brainwave activity is to really remain in that really steady, calm theta state. And once again, most religion, most spiritual exercises are designed to get people there and hold them there. Most meditations, mantras, prayers, all of that is specifically designed for this. So whoever the geniuses were at the beginning of human history that started putting together these religious systems kind of had that figured out in a more primitive way. We've also noticed that most tribal music, drum playing, etc., most music people use in ritual would be at 4.5 beats per second. So there's a really cool connection there between that music that gets people into those states and that brainwave state.
Humans describe the spiritual world as a place that is all around us and beyond, where supernatural worlds, beings, and existences of advanced life dwell, and it is taught throughout them that this place can even be accessed by a person through forms of meditation and the use of shamanism. This so-called higher realm is a place of great success and great fear that supposedly manifests also in the physical world and even above. It is interesting that although there is no proven documented evidence by humanity of the existence of the spiritual world and its inhabitants, humans experience this theory every day in their dreams. The spiritual world theory was documented by Greek philosopher Plato 370 BC, known as the theory of forms, where he describes a place of knowledge. This place is metaphysical and has a justice system of its own, filled with many forms that should be in one's desire to follow. The forms that are described here are presented as a metaphysical object of knowledge. However, its true form can never be understood, only its representation to the individual. Professor Carl Jung, 1919, later described these forms as archetypes, essentially giving the forms a source of existence. Jung describes this realm as a collective of human consciousness, stored in an unconscious realm that we access through human instinct. He describes human instinct to be a part of a process of an outside plan that holds consciousness in light matter, and each archetype within this light determines who you are. Jung believed these archetypes were behavioral, meaning that if your archetype was a thief, then you as a person will be a thief and will learn from and attract thieves. Some archetypes have even been described to have names such as devil, hero, and the most notable called the shadow. The shadow is explained as one of the highest archetypes. Its makeup consisting of the mother, son, and the Holy Ghost being the shadow. If we are dreaming about McDonald's, Call of Duty, television programs, money, expectations, does this inhibit your access to this realm, a place of truth? Unexplainable forms inhabited by fear-mongering demons, safeguarding angels, extraterrestrials, spirit beings, and a higher power. We have seen the scientists and physicians of our time hint at the existence of multiple dimensions through string theory and loop quantum gravity. However, we must look at all efforts of the human encyclopedia and examine other movements that have also claimed existences of other universes. There is a global belief that the very few at the top of society control the world through wealth, trade, and religion. Their claim to such climb to power is rumored and conspired to have come from ancestral pagan magic dated back to the Egyptian and Sumerian. These elites and their followers are known as occultists, and the very royal of these groups believe they channel communication to these archetypes described by Carl Jung and Plato. However, the occultists go further to give these archetypes personalities, calling them the old and ancient ones. In 1960, after 20 years of undercover investigations, a sting operation revealed a series of over 500 organized child abductions who were forced to live under one roof, falling victim to physical abuse, degradation, and forced drugging, all in the name of a woman called Anne Hamilton Brine, who believed that she adopted the children to become one with God. They called themselves the Great White Brotherhood, later renamed to the family. Born Evelyn Grace Victoria Edwards in 1921, Anne was eldest of 7 children. Her mother, Florence, was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia after setting her hair alight in the street. She then spent 27 years in a psychiatric asylum until she died, while Anne's father, Ralph, has little to no background. Anne spent years in different orphanages. Anne married her first husband when she was about 20, but he died in a car accident, which led to Anne seeking answers for Eastern religions and mysticism. This is when she took up yoga and started her own classes in Australia. Many wealthy clients, predominantly Jewish, would take her classes, and this was the opportunity that Anne took to preach her knowledge of occultism, even to go as far as convincing her clients that she was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. This belief led to so many wealthy clients giving up their children to Anne's cult, a cult that promised true ascension and that the children will inherit the land of the future. It is said that Anne's cult was deeply protected by government institutions such as the political, medical, and the justice arms, who helped hide, even alter documentations to keep the cult hidden for over 20 years. Even after the police raid, Anne flew away from Australia. Because of complex systems and legal evasion, she was only fined $5,000 on false document charges and never officially paid for her crimes against humanity. What was it about Anne that wealthy Jewish elites flocked to her cult and would even give up their children to her, and at all costs protect her identity and occultist practices? It is said that Anne practiced the work of Kabbalist mysticism, and through this practice she claims to have had spiritual journeys that had reincarnated her as Jesus Christ. These trips to the spiritual world were done by taking the drug LSD, which Anne and her helpers also made the children take. These sessions, described by the survivors, had a sexual relevancy and was used to control them as part of MK Ultra programming. The official story was that this was to aid in communication with beings from outer worlds in deep sleep, and that in these hallucinated states the children would come back and see Anne as who she really was. The truth is, Anne's methodical practices have an underlying source. It was revealed that Anne Hamilton was influenced by the teachings of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Helena was a highly praised Orthodox Russian Jewish philosopher who believed that there was life outside of our own, and that these species of creation were so highly advanced that they no longer held a physical presence. Her teachings came from combining science, religion, and mysticism. The following excerpts are from her book, The Secret Doctrine, which reveal how deep she was into the occult. Helena was one of the 19th century's biggest influences on the occult world. Her teachings would bring rise to Aleister Crowley. This is the same woman that Hitler was said to have been influenced by. Helena even goes as far to claim that the Bible already taught us that there were multiple planets which were inhabited by different species of creation. We previously mentioned that our dreams are built from influences. Our brain analyzes our influences and determines threats to survival, and stores what is influential to survival in our memories. It is therefore noteworthy to consider just how much of our influences affect our dreams. More specifically, cause interruption to our dreams' full potential. It is no secret that we become a product of our environment, and if Plato's and Jung's theories in any way have truth in them, then our influences become a form of corruption to human consciousness. In a sense, our spiritual world that is within us is filled with dangerous forms and archetypes that determine who we are and how we perceive life. This is your dream.